You are listening to the Brought to Light Masonic Podcast, a podcast for Freemasons and the public, bringing you to light through discussion and research papers about Australian Freemasonry and the Victorian jurisdiction in particular.
Welcome back to the Brought to Light Masonic Podcast. It's your host, Jack Aquilina, here with your other host, Brother James Mann. Hi, James.
How you going, Jack? Back again for episode 4?
Yes, it's what's it been for you? It's 2 weeks since you've been on the show.
Oh, yeah, it's been a couple of weeks.
Last episode
I wasn't
about
here for the third. Yeah, disappointed I wasn't on the third one.
Did you enjoy episode 3?
Yeah, definitely. It's an awesome episode.
That's it. Yeah, no, Brother Alan Richmond was really generous with his time, and I've had good feedback. We're actually running a campaign called Bring Back the Trowel, which I just jumped straight into for our listeners. We are running a campaign. It's an education campaign called Bring Back the Trowel. We're using the hashtag Bring Back the Trowel Victoria. And the idea behind this campaign is we passionately believe that the trowel needs to have its place back in the ritual of Freemasonry in Victoria. So we're asking you to support us by including the hashtag Bring Back the Trowel Vic at the end of your Masonic posts for the next month. And also sharing, we have like a little bit of an icon we'd like you to share. So jump on the Blue Lounge Facebook page. It's www.facebook.com/Blue Lounge Vic and support our campaign. What do you think? Do you think we should bring the trowel back based on what you heard?
Definitely. It was a really interesting story to learn about the trowel and what that working tool meant to Freemasonry. So it'd be awesome to see it back.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. I mean, look, the stuff that's been happening, by the way, we can do some news now because we've actually decided that we could do news once a month because, we record these things as we come. So the news for this month, and feel free to jump in any time, James, the news for this month for the Blue Lounge is that we're actually really excited to announce that we've just launched a new club of the Blue Lounge in the Maroondah district, which is another district here in the Northern District, in the jurisdiction of Victoria. That's being headed up by the new district president, Fina. Fina is a good guy.
Yeah, he seemed like a nice bloke, and I think Blue Lounge will be in good hands out in that district.
Yeah, they're really keen. They're organised, so that's happening. And also, I'm also pleased to announce, and this gentleman or brother will be a guest on our episode next week, that the Northern District, which is the area that the Blue Lounge is created in, has got a new president, and his name is Brother Steve Austin, and he'll be the president for the Northern District. So be handing off. I mean, I was the president for a while. It feels like I'm losing my baby, but I think he'll be in good hands up there. And also, we've just recently visited Warragul. We're heading off to Warragul to discuss with some young guys out there about setting up a club. They've got a young Masons network, and they're hoping to convert it across. So really exciting times for the Blue Lounge. We're growing. And as you know, this podcast is brought to you by the Blue Lounge Social Club, which is a club for young Masons in Victoria. And it's growing quite substantially, so we're really excited. It's really exciting times ahead. And James, you've been appointed to the state executive, haven't you, as the publication or the publicity officer?
Publicity, yeah. So got to get Freemasonry out there a bit.
And you're looking forward to doing that job?
Yeah, I'm looking forward to the charity side of it, especially. So we've got this charity idea where we're hopefully going to go out into the streets of Melbourne and help some people who are homeless.
Yep.
Make sure they've got some, warm doonas, pillows.
Yeah, I mean it's one of the coldest winters I've experienced in a long time. Just for our overseas friends, it's cold as in it's 2 degrees, 3 degrees, which is pretty cold for Melbourne. So James had this great idea. Why don't we just go out there and put together some packs for donated goods like blankets and jackets and assist people who are less fortunate? Because charity is more than just giving money, right? It's actually...
time is more valuable than money.
Absolutely. So it's a great idea. So if any of our listeners would like to donate blankets, jackets, anything you can spare, contact us. You contact James on James at blue.fmvic.com. And he'll be able to hook you up.
Yeah, I'd really appreciate the support. It'd be fantastic for everybody, especially Freemasons, to get involved in this idea. This would be good. Yeah, and if you want to volunteer your time, just shoot James an email. That was James at blue.fmvic.com, which is an awesome idea. The only other news we have for the Blue Lounge is that our next event's going to be on the 30th of July. It's been organised by Brother Steve Austin and Brother Dominic Donato. And what we've organised is this is our quarterly pub night. We're going to the Bull and Bear, which is a pub in Flinders Lane in the city, in Melbourne. We're going to start at 3:30. It's going to be a lot of fun. We have drinks and games. And I think someone even told me that there might even be a bit of a beer pong. But look, we'll see what happens. It's going to be a lot of fun. And then after that, we're heading off to a restaurant. I think it's Il Pomodoro, which is going to be on Latrobe Street.
where a brother who owns that restaurant is going to be assisting us by giving us a good range of food for about $35 a head. So looking forward to that. Looking forward to the next
night out. I'm looking forward to it too.
The pub nights are always fun. But so the 30th of July, if you want to check that out, jump on our Facebook page and check out our events. Look, from a brought to light perspective, from the news for us, I just want to do a bit of shout outs, okay? So I want to put a shout out to Robert Johnson, Brother Robert Johnson from the Whence Came You Masonic Podcast, which is really an inspiration for this podcast. Brother Robert, thank you very much for the support you've provided us. Your page has been sharing our posts and our episodes, and a lot of your followers and listeners have come over to support us as well. So thank you very much for the support you give us. You are an inspiration. We're proud to have been associated with you and still continue to be. And really thank you for all the work that you do for Freemasonry over there. And also to the Light Masonic Podcast. Shout out to Pete Ruggieri and Larry Maris. Thank you very much for the guidance and support, the constant support you gave us. Also for sharing our stuff on your Facebook page. That's incredible. We are huge fans, so we're a bit fan shocked at the moment, but thank you very much for your humour and all your support. We look forward to hopefully having you guys, including Rob, on the show. We'd love to have you on Brought to Light, so consider that a invitation, and we'd love to have you on. Also, Brother Lucas Crandalls, I'd like to put a shout out to him. He's been really big helping us with post-production. Believe it or not, James, he's been spending his Wednesday nights, usually early in the morning, doing post-production, so he's been really helpful. So thank you, Brother Lucas. And also to Brother Robert Shea for hosting and supporting us, especially at no cost. It is an expensive exercise to bring together a podcast, but he's posted us on Amazon and made the RSS feed available, and his technical support makes this podcast possible. So a big shout out to him. Thank you for all your support. And also to our listeners, thank you for your support. We've been overwhelmed. The first episode had a great listenership, and it's only been growing from there. So we're really, really excited from here. So that's all I have for news. Any news for you?
No, I think you just covered it pretty nicely. So
beautiful. Well, James, just so you know, this episode is entitled The First Degree. So we're going to have Worshipful Brother James Tulk, who's the District Education Officer for the Northern District here in Victoria, coming in to talk about the First Degree. But I thought, since you've only just did your first degree in February, I thought we'd get an idea of what some of your experiences with the degree. Because what we've been doing is the Blue Lounge has been visiting every first degree in our district and beyond to try and welcome our new brethren and bring them into the organisation by letting them know about what the Blue Lounge is. And you've been to 8, 9 of those?
Around that, yeah.
How do you you should know the first degree back to front now.
Yeah, I'm starting to get the hang of it.
How has visiting helped your understanding of the first degree?
We'll probably have to go back to just doing my first degree. So when you first do it, obviously you don't really know what's going on. So especially when you're blindfolded for the first half of it, so you've got no idea really what's going on. But in saying that, when you go and visit, and even for the first time, you still don't understand what's going on.
Yeah.
I don't think it's till maybe the third or fourth time of visiting where you can actually say, I understand what is happening here, what is happening in this ritual. But with visiting, what I found even more amazing was from the moment you go to Tile, you've got the same vibe at any lodge you go to. It's the exact same vibe. Then you go into the ritual, and you've got the exact same ritual, the same words, the same movements, the same steps. Like everything is the exact same. So out of 8, 9 lodges I've been to, just watching the exact same thing.
Yeah. And in saying that, you're picking up different things every time, and you're appreciating different parts of the ritual. And the other thing that, I'm not sure what your experiences are, but the one thing I love about visiting is you see the different cultures of different lodges. Some focus more on the south and the festive board and dinner and making that special, whereas others are more focused on the ritual. So that's an experience they try to enhance. Have you noticed the differences between the Lodge and Brunswick United?
Lodge Elrona, that was one where I really noticed it. I loved the banter in the south.
Yeah.
They were they had lots of banter in the south, and I enjoyed that.
Yeah, it's good. It's good to see the differences. We've, just so that our listeners know, we've visited right from Diamond Creek to Greensborough to Ivelda to Glenroy, all over the place, to Clifton Hill. We've done a lot of visiting, and we're going to continue to visiting. If you happen to have a first degree, and you think that it's a young guy going through that would like to have a lot of young guys there to welcome him, let us know. Hit us up and we'll come and support your lodge and welcome this new brother into Freemasonry. You can contact us at contact@blue.fmvic.com, and I'm sure you'll see James and I or someone else, Steve, and all the other guys out there to support you in your lodge. James, one other thing I wanted to ask you is, we sort of touched on this, I think, in our first episode, but for a person who is about to do, like, they've already gone through the application process, they've been voted on, who are ready to do their first degree, what's your advice to them in terms of from a recently initiated person? Because you must have been nervous going into the degree, and you know that some of the guys we've seen who have visited have been quite nervous when they've gone through the degree.
Yeah, I've seen a few people shaking. Well, that'd be the first thing I'd say. Try not to be nervous, so that you can get the most enjoyment out of it. If you go in there and you're shaking, you might not enjoy it as much as if you go in there and you know with a good bunch of people, nothing's going to harm you. You'll be fine. Yeah. Just go in there and try and actually enjoy what's happening. Try and learn by that first.
Embrace
degree.
It. Yeah.
And then adding on to that, my next piece of advice would be to go visit.
Yeah, visit. Yeah, get to know people. That's the other thing as well. I think getting to know people in your lodge before you actually do the first degree is good as well, because it means, or getting to know the junior deacon who's going to be taking you through the job. That's one thing. You had that advantage. You knew me. I mean, I took James for his first degree in February. It was a great experience. It was the first degree I had done, and to be able to take a friend through that was extra special. And I'm sure it was comforting having someone you knew holding your hand and taking you through the ceremony. So,
well, if anyone, that was good. But if anybody listening isn't a Freemason and is thinking about joining Freemasonry, I'd even advise approach the Blue Lounge.
Yep.
And come hang out with us. Come to the pub night.
Yep.
That way you get to know people. You can find out what lodge is going to suit you best to go join.
And you never know, the person you're having a beer with one night might be the same guy leading you through the ceremony on the night of your initiation.
That's exactly, and even with the charges, not just that, the charges.
Yeah.
So there's a lodge that is an initiation or is a second degree, where a few fellas from the Blue Lounge are going to do the charges.
Yeah, well, we're having, in October, I believe, we're going to the Lodge of Arana, which meets on the 4th Tuesday in Greensborough, and they're having a third degree for a brother or executive member of the club. And they've asked us to come along and do a charge, deliver a team. And charges are basically delivering an element of the ceremony. It might be a page of the ritual or whatever it is, or a certain lecture. And we're going to have 4 or 5 Master Masons go along and deliver it. In fact, last Monday I attended the Lodge of Commerce, which is a fantastic lodge. And our brother Kieran was passed to the second degree. And they invited me to deliver a charge in that degree, the final, which was a really important part of the ceremony. It was really special. Being able to stand across the other side of the lodge room and deliver a charge to a friend, instead of just delivering it because you have to, gives it that extra meaning. So, yeah, get in contact with the Blue Lounge, and especially if you're considering joining, and you'll develop relationships that you'll find will be an integral part of your process, especially if you're going through the 3 degrees. Just before we jump on to our interview with Worshipful Brother James Tulk, I want to advise of a few things that we've got here. Firstly, and I know this is a bit self-serving, James, so tell me if I shouldn't be doing this, but on the 16th of August, at the Brunswick United Lodge, at 7:30pm, we're having the initiation for my younger brother, Paul Aquilina, who will be initiated into Freemasonry. And I'm using this opportunity to invite you all, not only because it's my younger brother that's going to be initiated, because I think that's pretty cool, but also because it is confirmed now that the most worshipful Grand Master of the United Grand Lodge of Victoria, Worshipful Brother Donald Reynolds, will be in attendance with his full escort and his lovely wife, partner Maya, and they'll be attending along with the lodge, and it will be a fantastic night in Freemasonry. So there you go, that's a plug for my brother and for myself. So if you'd like to get along, don't believe there's a dining fee, but RSVP would be appreciated. You can RSVP to jack@blue.fmvic.com, and we'll make sure you get a seat on the night and a wonderful night in Freemasonry. So that's just to plug that. And also, I'd like to plug a friend of mine, Brother Luke Spickler, who's a member of the New South Wales Constitution. He's actually having his third degree at the Egyptian Room in Sydney on the 6th of August at 10am. Be a daylight lodge. Be a Saturday, but it'll be daylight. $15 for the South, and that's with Lodge Thespian, number 256. For all our New South Wales listeners, I'll be there. I'm travelling up. So if you'd like to come say hello, you're more than welcome to come say hello, and more importantly, support Luke in what's going to be an important ceremony for him. So that's Lodge Thespian, third degree, Egyptian Room in Sydney on the 6th of August. Aside from that, I've got no other news, so we may as well kick off our interview with Worshipful Brother James Tulk, who'll be talking about the first degree. Okay, so we're here today with Worshipful Brother James Tulk, who is the District Education Officer. That's correct, isn't it, James?
That's correct, yes.
And he's kindly given us his time today to talk about the first degree. Welcome, James.
How are you?
Good. It's good to have you on.
Thank you.
James, I thought we'd get you on because you've been a bit of an inspiration to myself and many other young Masons, because you run what's called the Masonic Advancement Program here in Victoria, in the Northern District.
Yep.
And pretty much for our listeners, it just means that we have to see James quite frequently. And he's pretty much our go-to education guy. So we thought it'd be good to have James along today to talk about the first degree, and we're going to get him in next week to talk about the second degree. But James, we thought we'd find out a little bit about you. Who are you, and when did you join Freemasonry?
Excellent. Okay. Well, for a start, I'm 60 years old.
Yep.
I was born in Wagga, New South Wales. Birthplace of many great Australian sportsmen, but I'm not one of them. Freemasonry. Actually, for my occupation, I'm a Cert 4 trainer and assessor, which sort of goes hand in hand with what I do in Freemasonry.
Yeah.
I've been a Freemason for 36 years.
Wow.
I joined when I was 26. When I first came to Melbourne in 61, I knew my uncle was a Freemason, but I didn't know what he did. But I knew he went out to a lot of socials, and I knew he wore these really weird aprons and things like that. And I thought, oh yeah, that's his thing. And next thing I knew, in the late 70s, my brother joined. My brother was 7 years older than me, and I thought, that's a strange fit. I just didn't pick him to be a Freemason. In fact, I didn't pick anyone to be a Freemason. I didn't know who Freemasons were, except for my uncle. And my brother joined, and he seemed quite caught up with it. Next thing, my dad joins. And my dad starts the hard sell, because obviously he wanted me in it as well. And at this stage, I started to sort of look up Freemasonry a little bit in books at libraries, and because we didn't have the internet then. And I saw the symbolism that was there, the stars, the sun, the moon, and things like that. I thought, gee, this is interesting. So anyway, I approached my dad, and I said, look, my brother actually, I said, I'll join. I'd like to join this. And because my curiosity was piqued, who are these guys? What do they do in these at the time I felt very unwelcoming type buildings, like with windows all shuttered up and doors,
brick walls,
with bars over the doors. I thought, who are these guys? What do they do in there? Well, the only way to find out is to join them. When I joined Freemasonry was in 36 years ago this month. I joined United Ambulance Lodge. I'm not an ambulance driver, but there were ambulance drivers in the lodge, number 602. We met down at Glenferrie down next to Swinburne Tech. The actual Masonic Hall's closed now, part of the student accommodation, and they've done a wonderful job of actually doing the external, renovating it and making it look beautiful. But anyway, I joined that, and on that night, something just clicked. I just felt that I've been waiting all my life for this moment, and that Freemasonry and myself have been waiting for us to get together. I just felt I belonged there.
Yeah, that's amazing. I felt the same thing when I joined, but it's good to hear that you have family involved, because that's something I didn't have.
I did at the time. My brother moved interstate and fell out. He didn't like the New South Wales Constitution, fell out. My dad had a minor stroke. He couldn't do charges, and it just destroyed him. He just couldn't do it. And so 36 years later, here I am, doing what I do. And I was like you guys. I was young. I was 26, and there were no guys in their 30s and 40s of Freemasonry, so Dad would take me out, and there'd be all these old guys. And, so why weren't you around in 1980 with the Blue Lounge and all these guys? Where were you? Anyway, okay.
Yeah,
so that's a bit of what I do. I left United Ambulance Lodge when it went into an amalgamation. I joined Lodge of Arana. I was a member number 836, which bits at Greensborough. I was a member there for over 20 years, went through the chair of King Solomon, Master of the Lodge twice. And I'm now a member of Ancient York, number 80, which is a very old lodge, and I've been a master there twice.
Yeah, which is Ancient York's a fantastic lodge. They had their installation last night.
They did.
Yeah, and I hope that was a success. And one of the other talents, when you mentioned the Cert 4 or the training course that you've done, and obviously you're a certified trainer, you did mention that that has a role in Freemasonry. So to build on that, I guess you're talking about your role as the District Education Officer in running what's called the MAPs. So maybe you could explain, what are the MAPs? Why do we do that? Why do we do this in Victoria?
MAP is an acronym. I hate acronyms because they don't tell you anything. And I get older brethren who think a MAP is like a plan or a direction, but it's not. MAP is an acronym for Masonic Advancement Program. This was brought about 9 years ago because it was felt within our constitution that there was no guidance for young members when they come in to unravel what the ceremony was about. Because a lot of the older guys in their lodge, the past masters, they didn't really understand them either.
Yeah.
To be quite frank with you, I stood in front of a lodge one night and I asked them, okay, can somebody please tell me what are the perfect points of your entrance? And there was this silence.
Yeah,
and I thought,
definitely.
This is sad.
Yeah.
Because they've gone through this degree, they've all done these questions, but nobody really understands this.
Yeah.
And I started by doing talks in my lodge. What really inspired me, and I know it's bad radio, but I got my nose into this book, Sons of Light. Now, all of you guys in the room would have got this on your third degree. Sons of Light, and I bet a lot of guys don't read it. Fantastic book. I started doing talks from that, and that's where I started. And then the district coordinator, Right Worship Brother Keith Morgan, came to me and he said, I need you. I said, why? He said, well, I've got to have a district education officer in this district. If I don't, I'm going to get my backside kicked because I'm the only one who hasn't appointed one. Can you do it? And he said, what does it entail? And I said, well, it entails speaking to Freemasons, young Freemasons, entered apprentices, fellow crafts, explaining the degrees. Now, you've got a grip on this already. Can you do this? And I said, well, yeah, I could do that. But it wasn't compulsory to come at that stage.
Oh, okay.
And quite frankly, nobody would come.
Yeah. And
that's when I think they realised the fact that a lot of members were actually told by older members, oh, you don't need to go to that because it's not compulsory. If it's not compulsory, you don't need to go. Like people don't vote in America because it's not compulsory. They made it compulsory, which is wonderful because now people come. And I also come with members of their lodges, and what we present to them is what I present to them anyway. I can't vouch for other district education officers because I don't know what they present. But I do know we all present the same sort of narrative, but we present it differently.
Yeah, yep. So basically what you do is, in between the degrees, people are required to go see you. Was it about 2 hours worth of... you do an education session.
Yeah.
And after that, the idea is to give them an idea of what they just went through.
Yep.
And answer some of their questions, so they're prepared for the next degree. I think it's a fantastic idea.
Well, they get questions. Now, questions, for those who don't know, they usually get a pamphlet at the end of each degree. Those are the constitutions. And we have questions which are a breakdown of what used to be the ancient charges. There used to be about 90 of these questions, but we only ask about 20. Now, that's what I got when I first started.
Cards.
A little card. Yeah. But anyway... What's on that card? I try to actually explain to them the answers to those questions. So when someone like Steve, when he goes through his degrees, when he gets up in front of a lodge and he answers some of these questions, which he's learnt, he understands what he's saying.
Yeah. That's one thing I've noticed. I mean, through the Blue Lounge, we do a bit of mentoring as well.
Yep.
And we've had guys say, why do we have to answer questions about, being divested of all metallic substances? Why were we dressed that way? Why are we telling them?
Yeah.
And I said, well, it's all in the reasons for preparation.
It's all about ritual. Now, what you're doing, when you learn those questions, you're beginning to learn ritual. Now, ritual is what binds us. Ritual is what teaches us our moral codes. Ritual is the pathway of everything that we do is our ritual. That's so important. So what we're actually introducing, the new Freemason to ritual.
Yes.
And he starts by just learning these simple answers. He's beginning to learn ritual.
Yeah.
And he's reciting ritual. So it's the beginning of your development.
Exactly right. And that's the good thing about what we do. Everyone takes that path, and the ritual's that journey that, you're right, binds us together because we've all taken that step. Mm-hmm. That's actually one thing I thought about after when I was doing my first degree. I thought, at the time, I was like, this is bizarre, I didn't expect this. And then I'm like, well, wait a minute. All these great men have walked in the same shoes as me, literally. They've walked the same steps. So it's important that we understand why we're taking those steps. So that's really good. Well, thank you for giving us information about the maps. What I thought we'd do is have a chat about the first degree. Okay. Now, I just want to let our listeners know this brief disclaimer. All the views here expressed, there's no right or wrong. This is all just our opinions.
It's symbolism. Symbolism is neither right nor wrong. It's just how you interpret it.
Exactly.
Everyone interprets it differently.
And you're going to hear a great interpretation, if I might say myself. James, you've done a lot of work in the MAP program of refining these degrees and finding out what it is people need to know. Yep. But what I've done is tried to borrow a little bit from my experiences at your MAPs and also add a few other things.
Yeah, sure.
So what we'll do is... we'll talk a little bit about the first degree. I've got a couple of questions for you. Let's get a sense of the history of the first degree, or if not just the first degree, the initiatic experience. What's so important about that? Because that's something we do a little bit different to other organisations. Other organisations teach their principles other ways. We do ritual and ceremony.
We do. Now, one of the things that you actually wanted to know was a little bit about what is an initiation and why is it so important. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Okay.
Yep.
I just want to quote you something out of a book here that I've got here, and it's a book by an author that I really read a lot of, Robert Lomas, and he actually puts a great analogy on ritual, on initiation, as being initiation. Let's clarify one thing: when people think of initiation, they think of what goes on in American sororities and fraternities where people do degrading things. Yep. And if they do these degrading things, then they become qualified. Or you may join a bikie gang and they might do degrading things to you. This is not what we do. Initiation to us is the beginning of something. It initiates something. It starts something. So it's the start of something. Robert Lomas talks about a fish in the sea. A fish living in the sea has no concept of the sky, the stars, the moon, the clouds, snow. He doesn't. He's got no concept at all. All he knows is the reeds and the water. But that fish actually left the water and walked outside. Suddenly, there's this whole new world open to him that wasn't there before. This is what happens when a young man comes into Freemasonry, because his mind is actually expanded. And suddenly he realises the fact that he can expand his own mind and expand his own consciousness.
Yeah, that's just fascinating.
And that's important. And so what it is an expansion of your mind, your consciousness, and we talk about light. Now, you're going to probably come to light in this. What is the first predominant wish in your heart is light. Now, we're not talking about what's in the ceiling. We're talking about light meaning knowledge.
Yes.
Knowledge, illumination. This is where the word illuminated, or to the worst extent, a word I hate, Illuminati. It all means light, enlightenment, becoming enlightened. But we are not part of the Illuminati. Let's clarify that. Yeah. So that is so very, very important. And when you have light, you mean knowledge. When you have lack of light, you have ignorance and darkness. So you have light on one hand, you have darkness on the other. And you'll see the word darkness used a lot in Scripture, in the Gospels. And this is what they're talking about. They're talking about light. I am the way, the truth, and the light. Okay? This is what he's talking about. I mean, I'm not a Christian. Okay, but a lot of what's in those Gospels makes a lot of sense and has made sense to me after I became a Freemason.
It makes sense. I mean, that's why Freemasonry's adopted these stories as a way of these well-known stories that have really strong moral significance, and we've adopted them and used those allegories to the benefit of our members. It's funny you mentioned light. We've called this podcast "Brought to Light," borrowing from.
I know.
As you know,
on that. Yes,
for
absolutely.
a certain section of the first degree.
Absolutely.
And you're absolutely right. In the first degree, there's an element of physically being brought to light, but that's beside the point. Like you said, light is this concept of enrichment through knowledge, expanding your understanding, enlightening your consciousness. It's interesting.
Absolutely.
And you basically summed up very well what the initiatic experience is about. Why is it important? I mean, it's not just, it's like, think about going to school. You're taught by a teacher, they talk to you through a lecture sort of process where they're conveying information that way. We convey our information through that as well, but it's more of an experience. You're literally walking the path, which is very interesting. I find that takes more of an impression. Do you remember your first degree or any of the degrees and what sort of impression that made upon you?
It's interesting. And I'll tell you what made an impression on me. It wasn't actually the ceremony itself, because it's very hard for a candidate when you're walking into a Masonic lodge room in initiation to really take a lot of what you've got home with you, because it's a very overpowering experience. But I talked about the Glenferrie Masonic Hall, and it was a very old building, and it was a little sad in its maintenance, I must say. And I'm glad it's gone in a way, because we need to keep our centres vibrant and well maintained. But there is a point where in the ceremony where they place you on the corner of, for those who don't know, in the middle of a Masonic lodge room we have a checkerboard carpet, which is about, I suppose, for our American listeners, about probably 12 by 6 feet. It's sort of like 2 cubes, which to us is a parallelepipedon. But anyway, it sits in the middle of the floor. We walk around it. We never walk over it. But they put you on what we call the northeast corner of this carpet, and that's where it all begins for you. Now, when I stood there, this carpet had been on this floor, I suppose, for a good 60 years at this stage. So you can imagine, when I stood there, it was worn right through.
Yep.
And it dawned on me how many hundreds upon hundreds of people have stood on this spot, and I'm now standing in their place.
Yeah.
That left an indelible mark on me that I'm walking in the place for all these guys. A lot of them are long since passed away, but I stood where they stood. We all stood at that same spot. Then I realised all the guys in the room had stood there. So everything initiates and starts in this northeast corner of this lodge room.
Yeah,
that's where it all begins for you.
Yeah, that's an important. Let's build on that, and that's really important. I had a similar experience. Walking through that process, you have sort of a feeling that you're taking the steps that everyone in that room has taken, and they're all watching you, all these people, and you think, wow, they've taken the same steps. And in terms of the northeast corner, it's really interesting. I've read a lot about how George Washington, laid the foundation stone for the Capitol in the United States, presumably in the northeast side, although there's some conjecture about whether or not it was actually there. But the symbolism is important because our ceremonies can be summed up in a way that it's about building yourself. The idea of King Solomon's Temple is an allegory about you, life, the building up of your character. How important is that first step, that foundation stone? And what is it in the first degree that we do that really emphasises having a strong structural base when building yourself up from something?
Well, for a start, the base you need, we have 7 virtues in Freemasonry that are taught to you in the first degree. And the 3 theological virtues are faith, hope and charity. Okay, so the faith is important because we must have belief in a supreme being or some form of creative force. Okay, so it might not necessarily be an interceding God. To some people it is. To other people it could be just nature. Yeah. So it can vary, but you've got to have some belief in some sort of force of creation, because creation is important, and also belief in the fact that there is an existence in our soul or spirit after death. That is quite important too. Faith, hope and charity. And we're taught the third of that virtue is charity, and we're taught that there as well. But at that particular point, I've always taught in the Map 1 that the 4 corners of the lodge room, because the lodge room itself represents the inner man himself. So we have wisdom, strength and beauty, and we have ignorance. They're the 4 corners of the room. So you're at that corner, and because north represents ignorance, the east represents wisdom, you've got wisdom on one hand, ignorance on the other. So you're at a crossroads. Okay, so you can go the way of ignorance, you go the way of wisdom.
Yeah.
But of course, we always lead our candidate in the way of wisdom
towards
the southeast corner. Yeah. That is important to me, that point is made. The fact that you are at that point in your life where you can just go back outside and go home, watch AFL 360 and live your life, be quite happy. Or you could come to lodge and mix with some very interesting people and have some interesting discussions with people and go to maps and go to other things and meet Brendan Kine, who's in the next room, who I think you should have here one night too.
Yeah, we're hopefully going to get him in.
Yeah, but that's important. So that is the point where all your measurements and everything starts for you. That's the beginning of the building of your own temple.
Yeah.
You know, so you're building a temple of yourself, but you're also being part of a larger temple.
Which is made up of many parts.
Many parts. My ashlar, my stone, will go with your stone and with Steve's stone, and we'll all go together. So,
that's fascinating. And it's interesting how you talk about a crossroads, because it resonates with my experience, at least. When you enter a lodge room in your first degree, you're blindfolded or hoodwinked. Yep. It's not intimidating, but it's a very different experience to what you'd normally come across.
It puts you out of your comfort zone.
It does. And it's very serious, and you feel that when you walk in the room. Yeah, look, you are safe. There's nothing embarrassing, but it's a serious process because it is about a crossroads. It's about taking that step towards embracing the organisation you're about to join.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not just a simple thing you can do lightly. It's not paying a membership fee and rocking up and going to a football. You know?
It takes you a little bit out of your comfort zone. It takes a bit of effort to do this.
It is, and it's really serious. And that's what I really like what you said about wisdom and ignorance. You have that choice, and you've taken that step. That's really fascinating. I mean, look, what I thought we'd do as well, because I'm a bit obsessed with these working tools, because I think they really sum up some of the strong abstract concepts we use in the most simplest way, by using these tangible objects and saying, think about it in this way, which I think is great. And in this degree, we have 3 working tools. You've got the 24-inch gauge, you've got the common gavel, and you've got the chisel. Let's talk a little bit about those, especially the 24-inch gauge.
24-inch gauge, I can split the working tools in the first degree into 2 groups. The 24-inch gauge is a group of its own. It stands alone because for an inch was a measurement we used prior to 1973, I think, 24, where we went to metric. We still cling to this old measurement, not because we love the old measurement, but because the number 24 is important. So if we could have a 24 centimetre gauge, it wouldn't make any difference. It would be the same thing. Yeah. So the 24 is important because it represents a complete day, from morning through to night, a complete day. But what it means is the fact that when you measure something, a measurement is a finite thing. from beginning to end. It doesn't go on forever.
Yeah.
It's not like the Fibonacci sequence
Yeah.
or whatever that goes on forever.
Yeah.
A measurement is a finite thing. So your life is like that.
Yeah.
Your life's a finite thing.
Yeah.
So one day, of course, we're all going to leave this plane of existence to a higher existence, and we don't know when that's going to happen. I mean, all those people 2 days ago in Nice on Bastille Day had no idea what was going to come for them.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
So we don't know. We don't know. And that's out of all respect for those people. We don't know what's going to happen. So this is what I say to you. You've only got so much time in your existence, so if you need to do something, you need to do it now.
Yep.
If you've got a member of your family you haven't spoken to and you think, I should speak to him, it's not a bad idea.
Yeah, it's interesting, and you're right. I mean, life is unpredictable, and the 24 hours of the day, we take it for granted. With those, every minute, every second is really important. And part of the ritual, they talk about spending it in part in helping a brother or helping someone in need, part in, obviously, prayer, part in work. It's not a prescription, it's just an idea to show that time is finite. Absolutely. Use that time to the best of your ability.
Absolutely. The other group in the tools, of course, are the common gavel and the chisel. Now, if you're an operative Mason, you wouldn't be using a gavel. A gavel is what's used in a meeting. So really you'd use something called a setting maul. A setting maul is like a wooden tool that's circular with a handle, and they still use them today when they make monumental masons still use these setting mauls today. But we'll go back to the gavel, because that's what it is. The gavel represents to us a force of conscience, which we look at the gavel and we're told that the gavel should keep down all vain and unbecoming thoughts, which means that you, with the gavel, you should try and make sure that you check yourself, and whatever you do, you listen to your conscience.
Yeah.
Your conscience tells you what's right or wrong. Your parents taught you that too, but your parents are sort of replaced as you get older with your inner nature, your conscience.
Yeah.
And I emphasise this. This is a narrative I have right through the whole degree, that you must listen to what's inside. You know that's not right.
Yeah.
You know you shouldn't belong to this. You know when somebody says something really nasty on Facebook, you don't go and join in the group and start doing it, because you're conscious, no, that's not right. I shouldn't be saying that.
So to an extent, it would be, obviously the conscience aspect is important,
It is important.
knowing right from wrong. But is it also an element of trusting your instincts, trusting who you are and the foundations in which you've been built on? Yeah,
it's a case of either you listen to your head or you listen to your heart sometimes, and you must listen to your heart a lot. Your head tells you, what you should do, what you like to do, but your heart says, hang on a minute, So sometimes you've got to keep that in balance. But yeah, the force of conscience, it means that whatever you do, it must be something that's positive and to the good of yourself and mankind, not something that's destructive.
Yeah, yeah.
The chisel, we're told, is its symbolical meaning of the chisel is the advantage of education. To continue to learn, expand your mind, and I just want to show you on my Kindle, I've got all these Masonic books, blah, 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 blah.
Yep.
All right, Kindle is the most wonderful thing. I get all these books, and I'm always wanting to listen to other people's opinions. I'm always expanding my consciousness and my learning experience. I never stop learning. You never ever stop learning. So, but the most important thing about these two tools is that they are used on stone. Okay, they're used on stone to smooth and prepare stone. So in our lodge room, we have 2 blocks of stone. Okay, one sits on a junior warden's pedestal, one sits on a senior warden's pedestal. Now, the one that sits on the junior warden's pedestal, the junior warden sort of sits on the side of the room, which we call beauty. So he sort of sits between the master and the senior warden. And that stone is a really rough stone. It's all sort of bumpy and lumpy. It sits there. That's what we call a rough ashlar. And on the senior warden's pedestal, of course, there is a perfectly cube-shaped stone, and that's the perfect ashlar. And we're told that represents your progress in life from being rough to smooth. That when you start off, your soul or yourself or your own intellect is in a rough state, and then it ends up being refined and smooth. Maybe when you get older, I don't think I'm a perfect ashlar yet. Yeah. But how do we get from one point to the other? We use these tools. Yeah. We use education to make us a smoother ashlar, but we use our conscience to do that as well. And I say to the brethren in a MAP 1, you don't go through university to get a Bachelor of Chemistry and end up being a cook for the banditos.
Yeah.
They'll pay you well because your skills will be great. You can pour out all the amphetamines you want. But is that right? No, that's not right at all, because the gavel tells you that's wrong.
Yeah, the force of conscience.
The force of conscience tells you that's wrong. You're bringing misery, and you're bringing a lot of money, but you're also spreading misery.
Exactly.
It's wrong.
Yeah.
So when you put these two Ashlars together, side by side, and I purposely do this in the map, I put them together. I don't have them like that. I bring them together, and you can plainly see that the rough Ashlar is bigger than the perfect Ashlar.
Yeah.
Okay, because the chisel takes off all superfluous knobs and excrescences, which means you must remove from the rough Ashlar to make the perfect Ashlar.
Yeah.
If that Ashlar is you, okay, what we're saying is the fact that we can't add anything to yourself that you aren't already, but you can only refine what you are.
Exactly.
I can go to a singing teacher for the next 20 years, but I'll never be an opera singer. Okay? It's not in me. I can't sing.
Yeah.
But you probably can.
Yeah.
Okay? So, that's the difference. We've all got our own talents. We've all got our own skills. We've all got something we bring to the table. You must look within yourself and find what you can bring to the table.
Yeah.
And work on that, refine that, and be as good as that as you can be.
I mean, I think that's beautiful. I mean, I think that the idea of education, I'm very passionate about education. I know you are as well. And the chisel representing that idea of knocking off those, superfluous expressions, and the idea of refining yourself. And like you said, the perfect Ashlar may never be attainable. It's an ideal. Yeah.
It's an ideal. Yeah.
It's an ideal. But the idea is taking that journey towards that point. And
I'm still working at it.
And I hope our listeners can understand this is an example of what we do in Freemasonry. The rough Ashlar, the perfect Ashlar, is an example of how we get these really complex ideas and refine them and make them understandable through these tangible objects, 2 stones, And that's what I love about Freemasonry. Let's talk about the obligation. This is something that is really sort of, the Simpsons episode, about the
stonecutters.
Stonecutters, we do, and the rest. There's this obligation side of things about swearing an oath. Tell us a little bit more about that, and why is that not too unusual, and why is it important at the same time?
Because, an obligation, excuse me, always comes before you are actually communicated secrets. Okay, now, what are the secrets of Freemasonry? The secrets are basically the way we identify each other. I could go across to Jack now and I could give him the grip, or I could say give him the grip or the word. These things we are taught. They're our secrets. Now, there's nothing really strange or evil or nasty about these secrets. They're just our way of identifying each other. It's like, I could ask Steve sitting over there at the moment. I could go and say, Steve, look, have you got a debit card in your pocket? I'm sure he'd pull out a flexi card of some description. I say, okay, Steve, what's your PIN? Steve will look at me and he'll think, why do you want to know that for? Because, he's actually giving me a degree sign now. And that's because that is something that is private to him and he doesn't want to share. Okay, so it's like a pin. It's a common pin that we all have as Freemasons, that we can identify each other. But it's nothing, there's nothing evil or satanic or anything in that. It's nothing to do with any of that. It's just the way we do it. But it's a trust. Most importantly, it's a trust. So when we bring you into our lodge and we obligate you and we're going to pass you the secrets, we are trusting you with something. And we're not trusting you with something great, but we are trusting you. And that tells you the fact that you must maintain that trust and keep that trust.
Yeah.
I could get you aside and I could say, Jack, I've got something to tell you. Deep down, people don't know this, but deep down I am blah, blah, blah. And I say, please don't tell anybody. Okay, I've trusted you with that.
Yep.
I don't expect you to go and to Steve and say, hey, Steve, guess what? You just told me. Yep. Okay, I don't expect you to do that. Yep. So when we trust you with something Freemasonry, you learn the fact that when someone entrusts you with something, your integrity maintains the fact that you keep that trust.
Yeah, I mean, that's what they say. What they say, a test of merit. That's what it is, isn't it? It's a test of merit.
Yeah.
To see that if you're willing to keep these, they're quite insignificant in the big scheme of things, these secrets in our ritual. Yep. If you're willing to keep that secret, we can trust you with the things that actually matter.
But we need you to actually not just say you're going to trust. We need you to actually, it's not an oath, but it's like a promise. And like in a court of law, the first thing you put in your hand, do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help me God? That happens, okay? We do the same thing. it's the same sort of thing. When you put your hands on a volume of the Sacred Law or a Bible or a Quran or whatever denomination you follow, you're actually putting yourself out there. The fact that, okay, I really do mean I'm going to keep this secret. Okay, it's just a word, it's a sign, and it's a small thing, but we trust you. You've got to hold on to that, and you're not going to tell anybody else that, because you're going to learn the fact that when someone doesn't trust you with something very confidential, that you are going to keep it.
Exactly right. Yeah, and that's the important thing about our organisation, all about trust.
Basically, that is all it's in the obligations. Yes, people say, they're blood-curdling oaths. Yes, well, I can tell you that no one else in this room but me actually went through the obligation where those ancient penalties, what we call them, were actually still in the obligation.
Oh, okay.
And I'm not going to say what these ancient penalties are, but they are the fact that if you do divulge any of these secrets, you'll have some rather nasty things done to your personal self. And actually, that was in the obligation. And when I started reciting that, I thought, what am I into here? And I think they realised that in the end, the fact that this wasn't really right, that these ancient penalties should be there, because that's not important.
Yeah.
But I do teach these ancient penalties in the map because I think they are important in a different sense. But it's just a promise.
Yeah, I mean, it's no different to, say, the Prime Minister standing up and when he's sworn into office and doing an obligation.
Hands on the Bible. You look at when President Trump gets
when he gets sworn in,
he will have his hand on the Bible.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So because they wanted them to actually really mean this, not just promise it, not just fingers crossed behind your back.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a serious thing. Well, so that's the obligation that way. So hopefully our listeners can dispel some of their myths there, but. In terms of, there's another thing that's mentioned in the first degree. It's called the Great Emblematical Lights. What can you say about those, and why are they important? Because you hear a lot about lights or concepts or ideas or landmarks. That's another one, which is very debatable. But in terms of the three great emblematical lights as instructed in the first degree, what's your take on those?
Three great emblematical lights are the volume of the Sacred Law, which is always open on the Master's pedestal. Square and the compasses. Everyone's aware of square and compasses. I've got a T-shirt on me at the moment which has got a big square and compasses emblazoned right across the front of it. Okay, they are very important to us because, once again, the word light means knowledge. It's a source of knowledge for us. And we look at these three different items individually and they teach us something. The volume of Sacred Law, whichever volume you follow, is like a guide to you. You ask anybody that's in Islam, everything they do is they hark back to the Quran or the Hadith, and these are all important books to them. So they're a source of light, a source of knowledge to them. Volume of Sacred Law is that to us. It's a source. It's the beginning of a moral code. It teaches you really, in many ways, what's right and what's wrong. Go back to the book of Genesis. Right at the very beginning, there's the 10 Commandments there.
Yeah.
You should not kill. You should not covet your neighbour's wife. You shall not steal. I mean, these are just basic do's and don'ts.
Yeah.
In a pretty basic form. You follow most of those, you'll be a pretty good person.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's always open. We don't read the sacred volume in our lodge meetings, although we have a chaplain that will recite from it. Laying on top of this volume of Sacred Law, which is open, is a square and a compass, set of square and a compass. Compasses are the two-pointed compasses that the ancient stonemason would use to mark their stones with. And a square. A square, first of all, is basically symbolises to us the golden rule of not doing to others that you would like them to do to you. Okay, so you're treating everybody equally.
Yeah.
And you'll hear that, treating someone, he's always on the square, or I can, you can trust Bob, he's fair and square.
Yeah.
Okay, square. Where's that square go before? It comes from Freemasonry.
Yeah.
The square teaches us the fact that we treat everybody fairly and equally, whether they're within the craft or outside the craft. Doesn't matter.
Yeah.
We don't favour people in the craft any more than other people.
Yeah.
Because we are a person of integrity, and we do. The compasses are quite different. The compasses, when you put a set of compasses on a stone, you'll scribe a circle. Okay, when you take it away, you'll have a circle and a point in the middle of it, and that is an important symbol in Freemasonry, because one point of the compasses symbolically points to what I talked about before, where your conscience is, where your heart, where your values and your morality, where your feelings, your thoughts belong to, that's the centre of you. That's the inner part of you. That's where one point belongs. And that's the centre of everything. It's the centre of your universe.
Yeah.
Wherever you go, your universe shifts. Like when I go home, you guys won't be there.
Yeah.
Because guys don't exist in my universe. But suddenly people at home come into my universe. But that central point is always there.
Yeah. So the dot in the centre of the circle would be representative of that.
That. Yeah. So, and your capabilities will guide you as how far that other point goes to that from that central point. Sometimes people spread their compasses too far and they find themselves in what they call deep water. He's out of his depth there. Maybe he spread his compasses a little too far. Maybe he should have brought them in a bit more and then moved them out. Yeah. Maybe he's out of his depth. But they also teach you how far you can go, and you can spread your compass as far as you want, but you need to understand how far you can spread them.
Yeah, understanding your limits and
being
in due bounds with your capability, not overstretching
being in due bounds with your capability and
yeah.
being in due bounds with yourself and your God and your family. It's all there. So that's what they teach us. And they're the three great emblematical lights in Freemasonry, and they are the first things we see. Now, it's no secret that you come into Freemasonry and your sight is taken from you. Your vision is covered. And when you first see something, that's the first thing you see.
Yeah.
And that's the first we want you to see.
Yeah, those three emblematic. And that sounds beautiful.
Those three great lights, those three great points of teaching are there for you. You may not understand them at the time, but in time you will understand.
So the first impression you have when they take that blindfold off is those three lessons, which sounds very fitting to me. And it actually leads us on to our next point quite well. I mean, one thing that they say in the first degree, and it's quite well understood, is poor candidate in a state of darkness. So we understand the state of darkness part. It's darkness in the sense of physically in darkness, but also the darkness of ignorance.
The darkness of ignorance, and that's the thing. He's in the state of ignorance. He really comes in with no knowledge of our ceremonies, no knowledge of our rites, but we are going to show him.
Yeah.
We are going to turn the light on for him and reveal it to him.
Yeah.
And what we're revealing is just our teaching. It's not the revelation is not a revelation of a new deity. Nothing to do with that. It's just we're going to actually show him what we know.
Yeah.
We're going to share with him what we know. And like I mentioned before, things like the working tools and the Ashlars and those sort of teachings.
Opening someone's mind and hopefully their heart to something different, something bigger.
And then when he grows, he'll realise the fact that there is no right nor wrong with this. The fact that you can look at these symbols and you can interpret them however you want.
Yeah.
But that's the beauty of it.
It's not dogmatic in any way.
There is no dogma in Freemasonry. That's why a lot of what I present in maps is things that I've actually brought with me to the map.
Yeah.
Although I do the Grand Lodge narrative, which is important, that's what they want. But I can add all my own stuff, but I must claim it as mine.
Yeah, you have to obviously put that disclaimer in, and that's fine. That's what same what we're doing with this podcast. And the other thing is poor candidate. What do we mean by poor?
Poor. Well, before you come into a lodge room, you are divested of all monies and metallic substances. So if you're wearing rings, you're wearing chains around your neck, which I am today, okay, we ask you to take that off. And that is very symbolic because one thing, we want you to come in without any items of value on you. Right, so that Rolex watch gets left outside. Okay, so, because you might have a Rolex watch, but the guy inside's got a watch that he buys from Kmart. That's a Kmart watch. Okay, so, there is no, you haven't got that. So you come in, so all your value that you've accumulated, all your wealth and esteem is left outside. And you come in, and later on in the ceremony, we do a little play where actually we ask you, would you like to give to a charity? And you have to say no. And because you've
got nothing.
I've got nothing because they took a life outside. But when they built King Solomon's temple, and we always hark back to this temple in the midst of time as an example of our teachings, and whether it exists or not, I don't know. I really don't. It doesn't really matter because the teachings that are around the construction of this temple are important. And when God told King Solomon the fact that when he built this temple, the fact that there was no metal tools to be used on this building because metal was forged and used for swords, spears, shields, things used in battle.
Yeah.
Okay. The great architect didn't want that. He didn't want any of this metal to be used on this building. So all the stones were put in with wooden mauls, which I explained earlier, wooden tools. So if any metal had to be used, it had to be used right away from the building.
Yeah.
So the building wasn't fouled by by steel or iron or bronze, any metals that were used in warfare. So we actually do that by divesting the candidate of metal, because he's building his own temple.
Yes.
And once again, no metal.
Yeah. Nothing offensive
Nothing
or defensive.
offensive can be brought into the lodge room.
Yeah.
So if you've got a Samsung Android in your pocket, you leave it outside. That's...
It makes sense. I mean, and that's the thing, and it's sort of, I remember when it happened to me, it brought to light this concept that I'm standing there literally penniless, and it reminded me of how there are other people in the world who are like this every day, all day, and have no choice in the matter. Yep. And it was humbling. It was a humbling experience. Yep. And is that a lesson in the first degree, humility?
Absolutely. You flip $1 into a tin of a guy sitting there and he's homeless. You might think, well, he's possibly a druggie, and I hate that when people think that. You flip a coin in and you walk away and you think, yeah, that was $1, I did something. Yeah. I helped that guy. Now, further down the path, in the third degree, I'm not going to go too much in the third degree with this, but the whole thing is flipped over, and you come in symbolically with worldly possessions.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
Now, later in your life, you've got all these worldly possessions, and the teaching there is the fact that no matter what you've accumulated, you can't take it with you.
Yeah, you're departing with it. You're leaving it in the same state.
You've got to leave it behind. You can't take it, because when you put it in the box, put it in the ground, we're all the same.
Well, without quoting the Lion King, it is a bit of a circle of life.
Yeah, it is.
You start with nothing.
Yeah.
And you leave with nothing.
You leave with nothing. So no matter what you accumulate after a time, it has to be left behind.
That's fantastic. And the other thing as well they say is, which I thought was interesting, free and of good report. Good report makes sense in the sense that people have a favourable opinion of you.
Yeah. Good report. You're a man of good character, and you've been vouched for as a man of good character. Once again, when the operative masons would go to the quarries to get their stone, they wouldn't just go and come back with an ashlar. They'd come back with just a big block of stone. They'd prise it from the rock, and when they'd come back, they'd tap it and make sure there were no fractures or imperfections within the stone. When a man comes into Freemasonry, we go through a series of interviews, we get references, because we don't bring anyone into Freemasonry. This person's got to be someone of good character to start with. Yeah. Because, when I sit down at a south with the brethren that you've got sitting at the table here, I know they're all good character. Yeah. When the stone comes in, it's got a fracture, we don't use it. Yeah. So this is the sort of analogy once again. Yeah. Free and of good report. Good report means the fact that people have vouched that you are a person of good character, that you are a decent person in society, in your community. Yeah.
And the requirement that you be free, that's an antiquitous idea, isn't it? That goes back to the days when...
Slavery. And all that. Yes, it goes back to being a slave, and we do talk about that in the map 1, and we mentioned at one point in time, Ken actually shows his hand, and he shows his hand because there are no tattoos or no missing digits, because slave masters in ancient times would actually remove a digit of a certain finger to identify the slaves that they own. Yeah. Or they put a tattoo or marking or something on them. Free in our modern day thinking is open-minded. Yeah. Open-minded, and we have a lot of men of the cloth in Freemasonry, and I admire them because they are open-minded. The fact that they can expand their own mind outside of their own dogma that their church teaches, and they can still encompass that. There are certain religions, of course, that you won't see in Freemasonry because the dogma prohibits it, because their thoughts are totally controlled by the information that's produced by the religion. Yes. Now, I'm not going to mention any religions here. I don't want to offend anybody out there, but they do come knocking at your door from time to time. Yeah. And, they are very rigid in what they believe. I read a lot about religions and cults, so I know what they believe. And if you're actually bound by these thoughts and bound by these beliefs that are so hard and fast, it's either black or it's white. You deal in absolutes. You're a Sith Lord. You're dealing absolutes. It won't work for you, because you've really got to step outside of that circle and look from the outside in. Yeah,
I like how you did that, because I've learnt something now. Because I understood the historical use of free, this antiquitous idea of slavery, but I think you're right. I think freedom of thought, character, the capacity to move beyond your... This is something you learn in philosophy. This is a philosophical teaching.
It is.
If you ever read Descartes, the first thing he does is, I think, therefore I am. This concept of deconstructing your existence, down to a basic state and making you think, why do I think these things? And if you approach life in that way, I think that you're really open to maybe change, but you're also open to self-improvement as well, which is really, really interesting. Well, all right, well, one last question before we wrap up.
Yep.
I want to talk about the practical element of the ceremony. So particularly the deacons, the two guys who physically take the candidate or the candidates sometimes around the room. I mean, could you tell us a bit about what that practically means and also what the symbolism of a guy holding your hand and literally taking you through the ceremony
This is very important. A deacon carries what we call a wand. A wand, for those who are unaware, is we have a large stick that has on top of it a dove with an olive branch in it, which goes back to the Noah, the legend of Noah. But anyway, and that means peace, tranquility. They're like messengers. The deacons are like a messenger, and they move around the lodge room, and they always take this large, long stick with them in their hand. They carry it a certain way. Depends which constitution you belong to is how you carry it. In Queensland, they carry it differently than what we do here. But anyway, they're still the same thing. In other degrees in Freemasonry, they still have deacons, but it changes to Hermes. Hermes was a messenger of the gods, and that symbol was sort of taken out a little bit because it was seen to be a pagan symbol, and it was changed with the dove-bearing olive branch. I love the Hermes.
It's a good idea.
The messenger of the gods. Yeah. You're a messenger. Okay, but these two messengers, these two deacons, they conduct a new person into Freemasonry. They take his hand and they lead him, particularly if he's blindfolded. And the message there for you is, no matter where you are or what state you're in, there is always somebody there willing to take your hand, willing to lead you and willing to guide you.
Yeah.
And one day, one year you might be the candidate, you might be the one that's being led around, and then several years later, you might be the person holding that wand, holding that large stick, leading somebody else, guiding somebody else.
Which happened to me recently. I've just taken up the job of junior deacon, and some of my closest friends from the Blue Lounge, I've taken them through that step.
And how did you feel doing that?
Humbling.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Humbling. I think I was more nervous than the candidate.
You're guiding him. Yeah. You're guiding him, and the most important thing is he's trusting you.
Absolute trust.
He's trusting you. So you've got to trust this guy. You're stepping out of your comfort zone. Maybe you can't see, and this person is guiding you. You have to trust them.
Yeah,
they're going to lead you around. And they're not going to, they're not going to lead you over a step, and they're not going to, take the piss out of you because they, No, we're not going to do that. We're not going to have someone kneel down behind you and push you backwards. Yeah. Okay, we're not going to do that to you. So that's trust.
Yeah, and that's a big common theme I've noticed in our conversation today. The first degree teaches a lot, but it sounds like it's introducing you to this concept of trust.
Absolutely.
Which is very important. We all think we understand trust, but I mean, personally, I think in today's society, trust is hard to find. Even harder than it's ever been defined, And I think that this lesson of trust through the first degree is something that is really invaluable.
And you can take that to your workplace. The boss comes up and says, "Jack, I'd like you to meet Rick. This is his first day. Could you show him what to do?"
Yeah.
Okay, so you got Rick with you. You got to think one or two things. Oh God, I've got to look after this jerk all day. Or you can think to yourself, "Okay, it's nice to meet you, Rick," and you can take him into your trust, and you can show him and guide him. And hopefully lead the way for him.
That's an example of applied Freemasonry, and that's one thing that I think is great. You do these degrees. It's about not only what you do in the lodge room, it's about what you take to the real world. And I think that's something people lose and forget sometimes. And I think you've provided a really good example.
It doesn't stop at the door.
No.
Never stops at the door. You never stop being a Freemason. I wear square compasses on my tie at work at the airport, not because I want to advertise to the world that I'm a Freemason, although it does do that, and I like that, but also reminds me of what I am, what I'm been taught, and I should remember that.
Yeah. When things get tough, you should always fall back on those principles.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you, James, very much for coming in today.
Thank you for having me. It's wonderful.
We look forward to having you in next week, and we'll get you in to talk about the second.
Slot you into my calendar and make sure I don't miss out. I will be back. I'll be back.
Beautiful. Thank you very much, James. Everyone, that was James Tulk, the District Education Officer for the Northern District in the Victorian jurisdiction, talking about the first degree. And what a fantastic interview that was. One thing I love about James is that no matter where you talk to him or where you see him, he's absolutely passionate about Freemasonry. And I hope you enjoyed that interview as much as I did, James.
Yeah, it was fantastic. He definitely is passionate. I could notice that a lot in the MAPS program that I did straight after my first degree.
That's right, you attended James's MAP, is that?
Yeah, it was fantastic. It was really good because he keeps you involved and interested in the presentation. So he's got a slideshow that, it's not just all audio, it's visual as well.
Yeah.
So I'd recommend to people from other districts even to come along to the Northern District and check it out.
Yeah, I mean, I think James and his team, it includes Steve and Richard and those guys, they've really revolutionised the map. They've made it interactive, and they use the... it's easy to deliver these things in a real stale way. I think they take it to the next level. I mean, I think even at the end there's a Masonic rap that he's got. It's called So Mote It Be. You can check it out on YouTube. The Blue Louders linked it not long ago, but we'll put it in the show notes, actually. We'll link to the rap. It's pretty cool. But yeah, it was a great interview, and it was really good to get an insight to someone who's been a member of, I think he said 36 years.
Yeah, it was a long time.
And he's just so passionate. He said he joined at 26, and like he was saying at the time when he joined, there wasn't really a group like the Blue Lounge or the Brought to Light Masonic Podcast to bring this sort of education and experience. So the fact that we're around and had that impact is really, really special. So I guess the main thing that resonated with me was when he said it's an exciting time to be a Freemason. It really is.
Definitely.
And I just love the passion. Building on that, in terms of, you said that you've been to his maps and all the rest of it, what I was hoping to get from you, James, today, before we wrap up, is an idea of what do you think, if there was any lessons you took out the first degree, what would be an important lesson that you took out from that degree? Is there something in there in particular that you think is important?
First degree, like what I really thought of it was, it's not complete, obviously, the story. So I saw it as a start of the story. But I guess the most important lessons is faith, hope, and charity.
Yeah.
So they're the things I learned in the first one.
So that was really impressionable on you. Yeah. Starting a journey, and also that concept of faith, hope, and charity, the foundation knowledge of Freemasonry. And you think that that's something that really impressed upon you? Yeah,
definitely. And the faith part in I forget the exact bit, but there's a faith part with the Supreme Being.
Yep.
So you give all your...
Yeah,
I forget that bit. But I'm looking forward to the second and third degree.
Yeah.
Because I think the story hasn't finished, and I think I'll learn a lot more during those 2 degrees.
Yeah, I mean, that's important. I mean, that like you'll be able to agree anyway, like James said, it's such a chaotic experience when you're going through it, because it's overwhelming. There's a lot coming your way. And it really does take a lot, like you for yourself, 9 times or 8 times of visiting before it even clicks. And the fact that you're now walking away with an impression of, you actually understand it's the beginning of something, and it's laying foundations of principles. That's really important.
Probably the most important thing I did, actually, even more than what I was just saying, with the working tools. So how the working tools, like to smoothing out and all that kind of stuff, they were really... I don't know if I can actually say what they're...
Yeah, you can.
So is it the Chisel? That was the one that was most impressive.
Yep.
So once you get to the end of your product... So what's the middle? Is it the gavel?
So you've got the Chisel, which obviously is about education, and the idea of... And the gavel is used to obviously knock off superfluous parts and expressions. So the idea is to get that rough ashlar and smooth it out to a perfect mass, And I guess what you're saying is you got the emphasis on education, about improving yourself.
You got to put that emphasis on life in general, on yourself and your walk, and where you're going to go. But probably actually the most important thing was what I learned at the map was the compass. What the compass means.
Yes, yeah.
So your compass, your circle. James Tulk taught me this. So your circle might be only so big.
Yep.
But with the compass, your circle's ability to make it bigger.
Yeah.
So you can put that in your education. It can start off small. But you can always expand on it.
Exactly right.
And that was probably that actually is probably the most important thing I've learned so far.
Yeah, it's a good lesson, and the fact that you've taken that out from the degree, considering you only did it in February, is really good. And I hope that I think that's a good example for people who are thinking about joining or who've recently joined. It just shows you don't have to know everything once you go through this process, but if you take away something as important as that, you really are on the right track. So that's really good. Well, I'm glad you enjoyed the interview with James. We're going to get James Tulk on next week as well to speak about the second degree. I know you haven't done your second degree, but he is going to be really fascinating to hear how he's going to cover some of those really important principles that come out that. But it's good that we're all taking away something from that. What we're going to do now is we're going to wrap up the show. That's it for episode 4 of the Brought to Light Masonic Podcast, and we did call this episode the first degree. We're going to end with a reading that I've done from the Sons of Light booklet that Worshipful Brother James Tulk spoke about in his interview. We're going to be reading a chapter called the beginning of the journey, or the start of a journey, which is about the first degree. It goes for about 15 minutes. I hope you enjoy it, because it was produced by the Victorian Lodge of Research. It's Right Worshipful Brother Kenneth Linton, and it's a really good summary of the first degree. But with that, thank you for listening to the Broad to Light Masonic Podcast, and we look forward to speaking to you next week. See you, James.
Thanks for having me on, mate.
This reading is from a book called The Sons of Light, written by Right Worshipful Brother Kenneth G. Linton, past Senior Grand Warden, past Master of the Victorian Lodge of Research, number 218, on the Registry of the United Grand Lodge of Victoria. I read each chapter on page 5, entitled A Journey Through the First Degree. I call this chapter A Journey Through the First Degree because I intend to conduct the reader through the first degree in the order of the ceremony, touching on its highlights and adding interpretations and explanation where necessary. In our journey through the first degree, we meet a series of challenges. No doubt we all remember that the first challenge was, do you feel anything? That first incident was designed to intimate to us that we were about to engage in something serious and solemn. We were no sooner inside the lodge than we were faced with the second challenge. Are you free? Then we were avowed that they were unfettered, body, mind and soul. The blessing of the Almighty was invoked in the proceedings. Then, without a pause, came the third and the most important challenge of all. In all cases of danger and difficulty, in whom do you place your trust? There is, of course, only one answer, but that answer is a confession of a simple faith. The simple faith of Masonry. We do not inquire a candidate's religion, but we do insist on a belief in a supreme being. Faith in the great architect of the universe is the rock foundation on which the whole of our Masonic edifice is built. Of the three theological virtues, faith, hope, and charity, the last is, of course, the greatest, chief among the blessed three, as we sing in our ode, but faith is necessarily the first, the starting point in any approach to God, and so we find right at the beginning of our Masonic career a profound emphasis on a simple faith. But let us continue our journey. We enter the lodge room from the west, symbolizing the gateway of life, not birth, but the beginning of life. Being the gateway to life, we also eventually be the gateway from life, but that comes much later in our story. We travel down the north side, the place of darkness, symbolizing the development of life, the time spent by the embryo in the mother's womb, or the seed in the darkness of the earth. Then we arrive in the east, where we receive the light, symbolizing birth. In his circumambulation of the lodge, our candidate follows the path of the sun, which, of course, rises in the east, reaches its zenith in the south, at least it does in the northern hemisphere where our ceremony originates, then sets in the west and returns to the east through the hours of darkness. Our candidate knocks 3 times at the junior warden's pedestal and 3 times at the senior warden's. These 3 knocks have profound significance. They betoken the 3 degrees, which in turn represents man's approach to God in each of the 3 phases of his nature: a physical approach, a mental approach, or intellectual approach, and a spiritual approach. The candidate, of course, knows nothing of this at this stage, but the pattern of our 3 degrees is based on these fundamental principles. We advance to the east by 3 irregular steps, symbolizing stepping into the unknown. The first is a timid step, full of caution. The second, a little bolder, indicating rising confidence. And the third, quite bold, because fear has now been dispelled. The first part of the sign of an entered apprentice has the same significance, about reaching into the unknown. The predominating number of this degree is 3, just as 5 and 7 are the numbers of the other 2 degrees, and so, as the candidate kneels, he forms 3 squares, the first with his leg, the second with his foot, and the third with his arm. His hand is in the position of an emblem of concealment. He takes a vow of concealment, and it's worthy to notice that the words used in this obligation are heal and conceal, as both words have the same meaning, heal being derived from the Anglo-Saxon, the language in use before William the Conqueror arrived in Normandy, and conceal being derived from the Norman French word that he brought with him, thus establishing a second language in England. Freemasonry here used the words from each language to make sure that it was not misunderstood. This may throw a little light on the age of our ritual. Both these words mean to cover over, just as the other word heel, which was derived from the Anglo-Saxon word Helen. The thatchers of roos, particularly in Cornwall and Devon, are called heelers to this day, and our nurserymen use that word when they cover the roots of a plant with earth till they are ready to place it in the ground. The obligation is obviously twofold, inasmuch as we may neither do certain things ourselves, nor permit them to be done by others, but the words indite, which is not previously understood, makes the obligation threefold. Its meaning is to direct or dictate what is to be uttered or written. If we may not permit a second person to direct or dictate what is to be uttered or written to a third person, the word has a profound significance on our obligation. When God accused Cain of Abel's murder, he answered, "Am I my brother's keeper?" The word indite in our obligation shows us that we are our brother's keeper. The mere passive witnessing a brother thus violating his obligation implies the violation of our very own. We are made a mason in the body of a lodge just, perfect, and regular. The word just, in this instance, has the archaic meaning of correct, as it does in the investiture of the treasurer, when we use the words just and regular accounts. What makes the lodge just, and what makes it perfect, and what makes it regular is a fantastic question. The sacred volume open on the master's pedestal makes it just and complete. The number 7 makes it perfect, as we learn in the words from the first degree tracing board, with a confirmation of that in the second tracing board, as you no doubt remember. The warrant or charter for the United Grand Lodge of Victoria makes it regular, without the sacred volume to make the lodge just and complete, the presence of 7 regular-made masons to make it perfect, and the warrant or charter to make it regular. No lodge can conduct the ceremony of initiation. After the candidate has received the light, he takes his first regular step into Freemasonry, which he does in the form of a Tau cross. When I was in India several years ago, I noticed that they use the same words as we do regarding the placing of the candidate's feet, but they added the words so as to form the letter T. This is quite right, as the English letter T is the equivalent of the Greek letter Tau, and the free emblems in the form of the letter T on the apron of the installed master are the Tau crosses. The letter Tau is the 19th letter of the Greek alphabet. In its original form of a cross, it is probably the most ancient and of all sacred signs. It is depicted on the oldest monuments in Egypt, Assyria, Persia, and Hindustan. According to Mackey, Moses marked his sign on the forehead of his brother Aaron, where he anointed him as the first high priest of Israel. It was this sign that Ezekiel caused to be marked on the foreheads of the righteous, who were thereby saved from death. In India, it is the sign of Brahma, the creator, the first of the Hindu trinity, and used by the Brahmins, the highest caste of that religion. It was highly revered by the ancient Druids, and is, of course, the most sacred sign of Christianity. We form a Tau cross with each of our 3 degrees, and when we are exalted in the Royal Arch, which it is claimed it is not another degree but the completion of the 3rd, we find the 3 crosses united in the triple Tau. As the left-handed side symbolises evil, we always take a step with the left foot, as symbolically of putting down evil, before we make this sign. The Latin word for left is sinister, which accounts for the ominous significance attributed to this English word. The word of the degree is a Hebrew word, whose meanings give us the key to God's covenant with Israel, of which the name of the pillar was intended to be a constant reminder, as we see from the paraphrasing of the covenant, "In the strength of Jehovah shall the king rejoice, for he will establish the throne of David and his kingdom to his seed forever." The pillar really has nothing to do with the great-grandfather of David, only inasmuch as they are both born with the same name. Thus the name of the one serves as a reminder of the name of the other. Have you anything to give? Here, brethren, is our 4th challenge, and although at the time we were prevented from accepting that challenge, now that we are Freemasons, we are bound to accept, for that we have so much to give. Our time, our energy, our devotion. To disregard this challenge is to condemn ourselves to a lack of interest, which so easily becomes that fatal attitude of apathy. The ancient Greeks had 3 words, eros, philia, and agape, which are translated to the same English word love. But to the Greeks, they had 3 distinct meanings. Eros was the love between the sexes. Philia was the love for man to man, or brotherly love. And the 3rd, agape, was something far greater, the love of God for man, which of course knows no bounds. The equivalent of agape in the Latin language was caritas, and it is from this word that our word charity is derived, and it has the same meaning. It seems to have been somewhat degraded in the outside world, but in Freemasonry it still has that deeper meaning. We cannot hope to obtain such a love, but we can strive to emulate it to the best of our ability. Faith, as I have already mentioned, is necessarily the first step in any approach to God, and the 3 degrees in Freemasonry represent our approach to God in the 3 phases of our nature. We belong to God, body, mind, and soul. It is hope that enables us to take the next step, but charity, that sublime virtue derived from an emulation of God's love for man, that must be the greatest, and so we depict it on our tracing board as the top rung of the ladder. The Northeast Charge is a dramatisation of this great virtue. It reminds us of our obligation to relieve the distresses of our indigent brethren, and this reminder is constantly repeated at the conclusion of every meeting in the Tireless Toast. During my Masonic career, I have heard several interpretations of the Tireless Toast, but the following so appealed to me that I have long forgotten the others. According to this interpretation, the Tireless Toast is meant to remind us of the time when we stood in the northeast corner of the lodge and listened for the first time to these words. It cannot be denied that we have many members of rank and opulence among us. Neither can it be conceded that among the many thousands who rage among its banners, there are some, perhaps from circumstances of unavoidable calamity and misfortune, who are reduced to the lowest ebb of poverty and distress. On their behalf, it is our usual custom to awake the sympathy of every newly initiated brother by making such a claim. This charge concludes with the words, "Should you at any future time meet a brother in distress who might solicit your assistance, you will remember those peculiar moments when you were admitted into Freemasonry, and cheerfully embrace the opportunity of practising towards him that virtue which you must now profess to admire." When we honour this toast to our distressed brethren, we think of them as being dispersed to the 4 points of the compasses over the surface of land, water, and so we point, but not to the south, for symbolically speaking, we are standing in the south, but we point to the other 3. Straight ahead is the north, left the west, and the right the east. We do this 3 times in allusion to the 3 degrees, which in turn allude to our triple nature of man, body, mind, and soul. For man must dedicate himself to God in each of the 3 phases of nature, and in each of the 3 degrees to represent our approach to God in that particular phase of our being. When we find ourselves face to face with our distressed brother, what might we be called upon in order to do to carry out this obligation? Well, first of all, we may have to thrust our hands into our pockets, where we keep our money. However, financial aid may not be his greatest need. Perhaps he is depressed, downcast, discouraged, and our sympathy, counsel, or encouragement could give him renewed strength to fight life's battles. He may have all the money he needs, and yet be destitute of faith, of hope, and of course, and it is our duty to share our faith and hope and our courage with him. Our aid to our distressed brethren could take yet a 3rd form. Perhaps he is aged, invalid, blind, or otherwise handicapped, and so unable to do something that we could do for him, some physical task that we could do for him with our hands. Yes, our aid comes from our pockets, from our hearts and our hands, and so we indicate each in turn. We do it 3 times for the same reason that we pointed 3 times: body, mind, and soul, hand, head, and heart, north, west, and east, and in silence, because whatever aid we render to our distressed brother will forever remain a secret between the giver and the receiver. The hand in this position always symbolises concealment, as it was thus that we took our obligation. This time it is a double concealment, representing concealment in 2 places. It is not only what occurred in the lodge room, but also what occurred here at the festive board, where we honour this toast that is not to be divulged to the outside world. We call our place of refreshment the south because the cathedral builders always erected their lodges on the sunny side of the construction, which in the northern hemisphere is the south. It was here that our ancient brethren took their refreshment, and so the place of refreshment came to be called the south. It has been well said that, and I quote, "Faith is lost in sight, hope ends in fruition, but charity extends beyond the grave through the boundless realms of eternity." This sounds like a riddle, but it is a profound truth, because faith is the assurance of things not seen, and when we finally see, then we believe through sight, and no longer through faith. Faith is lost in sight, As hope exists only in the expectation of possession, it must necessarily cease when the things desired is at last enjoyed. And I quote, "Hope ends in fruition, but charity, exercised here on earth in acts of mutual kindness and forbearance, is still to be found in the world to come, in its most sublime form as God's mercy to his erring creatures." In the reasons for preparation, we are told that our right arm was made bare as a token of our sincerity, and to show that we were able and willing to work. This, brethren, is yet another challenge, similar to give, because we are prepared to work diligently in gaining knowledge and carrying out the teachings of the craft. We are sentencing ourselves to the same fate as those who do not give. The important point is that we both give and work, implying involvement. Again, in the reasons we are told, there was not heard the sound of hammer or any other implement of iron. To my knowledge, there are 4 references to this in the sacred volume. The first is a warning, which is given in Exodus chapter 20, verse 25, where we read, "And if thou wilt make me an altar of stone, thou shalt not build it of hewn stone, for if thou lift up upon thy tools upon it, thou hast polluted it." The second is an instruction which is given in Deuteronomy, chapter 27, verse number 5, where we read, "And there shalt thou build an altar unto the Lord of thy God, an altar of stones. Thou shalt not lift up an iron tool upon them." We know that the commandment was carried out because it was recorded in Joshua, chapter 8, verses 30 to 31, where it was said, "Then Joshua built an altar unto the Lord God of Israel in Mount Ebal, as Moses the servant of the Lord commanded the children of Israel, as it is written in the laws of Moses, an altar of whose stones, over which no man hath lift upon a tool of iron." The fourth reference shows us that this law was observed in the erection of King Solomon's temple, for in the first book of Kings, chapter 6, verse 7, we read, "And the house, when it was in building, was built of stones made ready before they were brought hither, so that there was neither hammer nor axe nor any tool of iron heard in the house, whilst it was in building." I will mention but 2 things in the tracing board, and the first of these is a pair of things, the rough and perfect ashlars. Both of these ashlars are reminders of the necessity for moral behaviour and the importance of developing the intellectual faculties. In the ritual, we are told, the rough ashlar is a stone, rough and unhewn, as taken from the quarry until, by the industry and ingenuity of the workman, it is modelled, wrought into due form, and rendered fit for the hands of the more expert craftsman. This represents man in his infant or primitive state, rough and unpolished, as that stone, until the kind care of attention by his parents or guardians, by giving him a liberal or virtuous education, his mind becomes cultivated, and he is thereby rendered a fit member of civilized society. The perfect ashlar is a stone of true die or square, fit to be tried only by the squaring compasses. This represents man in the decline of years, after the regular well-spent life in acts of piety and virtue, which cannot otherwise be tried and approved other than by the square of God's words and the compasses of his own self-convincing consciousness. Dr. Mackey, in the Encyclopedia of Freemasonry and his Kindred Sciences, presents the same idea in these words. The rough ashlar, or stone in its rude and unpolished conditions, is emblematical of man in his natural state, ignorant, uncultivated, and vicious. But when education has exercised its wholesome influence in expanding his intellect, restraining his passions, and activating his mind, he is then represented by the perfect ashlar, which under the skilful hand of the expert craftsman has been smoothed and squared and fitted for its place in the building. Dr. Joseph Fort Newton of the Builders magazine clothes this idea in these beautiful words. Freemasonry insists that its members shall be men, free men, of adult age and of good report. Then, as the stones of King Solomon's temple were hewn and chiselled and sharpened and polished, far away, so that without the sound of axe or hammer they might be softly, silently set in the place that awaited them, so in the lodges of Freemasonry, the characters of its members are silently, secretly smoothed and shaped until the rough stone becomes the perfect ashlar, and the long pilgrimage is over. The working tools are then laid down, and the finished stones find its resting place in the great temple of humanity, which the great architect has been building since the world and the universe began. Now let me add to the thoughts contained in the last verse of a poem by Lawrence Greenleaf, which was entitled Temple of Living Stones, where he said, and I quote, "Although our past achievements we with honest pride review, as long as there's rough ashlars, there is work for us to do. We still must shape the living stones with instruments of love for that eternal mansion in paradise above. Toil as we've toiled in ages past to carry out the plan, 'tis this, the fatherhood of God and the brotherhood of man." In ordinary everyday life, when we speak of a rude or polished mind or an upright man who is a pillar of society, of meeting on the level or acting on the square, we are using words that found their origin in our Masonic craft. And when we speak of putting someone through the 3rd degree, we are thinking of an ordeal, and our Masonic ordeals teach us that we cannot rely on our own worth, no matter how virtuous, nor yet on all the science and accumulated knowledge of mankind, but only with the sure grip of faith. All else will prove a slip and fail us in our hour of trial. Which brings us back to the point where we started our journey, and where we answered the most important challenge. In all cases of difficulty and danger, in whom do you place your trust? Our answer, in God, is a confession of faith, the simple faith of Freemasonry. But the simple faith of Masonry is its very cornerstone, its first and greatest landmark, the basis of its plan, its purpose, its promise. There is no other foundation upon faith in God. Freemasonry builds its temple of brotherly love, relief, and truth. As for most things, Dr. Newton of the Builder's Journal has something apt to say about the simple faith, and so I conclude this chapter in the following words. Out of this simple faith grows an inevitable logic, the philosophy which Freemasonry teaches in signs and symbols, in pictures and parables. Stated briefly, stated vividly, it is that behind the pageant of nature, in it and over it, there is a supreme being, who initiates, impels, and controls all, that behind the life of man and his pathetic story in history, there is a righteous will, the intellect, the conscience of the Most High. In short, that the last thing in the universe is mind, that the highest and deepest thing is conscience, and that the final reality is the absoluteness of love. Higher than this faith cannot fly, and deeper than this fort cannot dig.
You've been listening to the Brought to Light Masonic Podcast, bringing you to light through discussion and research papers about Australian Freemasonry and the Victorian jurisdiction in particular. We look forward to speaking to you on our next edition, and until then, we're happy to meet, sorry to part, and happy to meet again.